Welcome everybody to today's webinar on the art of effective communication. Today we are joined by Kristine Thompson, who is a Melbourne-based registered psychologist with over 27 years experience across organisational and clinical settings. Kristine specialises in leadership development, executive coaching, counselling and general workplace support, and is a facilitator of training and workshops across a variety of topics, including mental health, communication, resilience, and leadership. Have I got that right, Kristine?
Yes, perfect. Thank you, Sally.
Great, no worries. Now, today, Kristine is going to share with us some self-management strategies for constructive communication, some common breakdowns and challenges of communication or lack thereof in the workplace, and some practical tips and tools and strategies to overcome these challenges. Now, if anybody does have any questions, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A chat box and we can address those towards the end. And if there are any HR or business leaders or P&C looking after employee wellbeing that want to get some more information about how Leapwell can support your workforce, please feel free to contact myself on sally@leapwellgroup.com and we can have a chat. So with that, Kristine, I will hand over to you. I'm really looking forward to picking up some strategies specifically on the self-management strategies in communication. So over to you, Kristine. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Sally. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. As Sally said, my name is Kristine Thompson and I'm a psychologist and trainer. I'm delighted to be here with you today. It's my pleasure to present our session on effective communication. Today's presentation focuses on how leaders and employees can use communication to bring clarity, alignment, and trust to their teams. We'll explore some practical research-backed strategies for managing your own communication, adapting to others, and addressing some common challenges. Whether you're leading in a corporate, government, or service environment, part of a large or small team, these skills are critical for effective communication. Our agenda includes a few key areas. First, how to manage your own communication under pressure. Then, how to adapt to the different preferences that people bring to various workplace settings. Finally, we'll address some of the common communication challenges we face and look at how to respond effectively. I hope in the conclusion of our session today that you'll be able to apply some practical strategies to enhance your communication style, improving outcomes, and increasing your level of communication confidence, because that's what it's all about. So let's take a moment to arrive. I invite you all to take a lovely, big, deep breath in and a slow exhale out. Coming into the present moment, let's all center ourselves and open up to the session we have ahead of us. I will welcome some questions or queries at the end of the presentation, so feel free to pop them in the chat function. We'll get to those at the very end. That would be fabulous. Knowing others is intelligence. Knowing yourself is true wisdom. Effective communication starts with self-awareness. Research from emotional intelligence theory and cognitive behavioural psychology shows that when leaders manage their own emotions, they're less reactive and more constructive. Self-awareness, personal insight, and self-management are key to knowing what works best for you. As a psychologist, it's my job most days to teach self-awareness and insight about our behaviours, both how we interact with others at work and how we engage with those important people at home. The patterns we engage in and how our behaviour impacts the world and the people around us is essential knowledge. Without this self-knowledge, we can ignore the true signs of stress, fatigue, pain, injury, both physical and psychological. So it makes sense for us to work on self-awareness and self-management. Improving confidence and leading with clarity goes hand in hand with knowing yourself well. So as a reflection, while we go through this detail, have a think about who you are. What do you stand for? What do you bring to the conversation, to the table, to the workplace? What are your strengths and your areas for development? Let's consider for a moment that you are highly self-aware, full of personal insight, and can recognize those pre-signs of stress and pressure showing up in your body. You notice them and take action, perhaps even engaging in self-care activities. You might even be attuned to your emotional states and consider taking a break to emotionally and psychologically self-regulate, rather than escalate your behavior and become heightened. This losing our cool, so to speak, or becoming dysregulated, not very helpful. This would be good news indeed if this was true all the time. However, this response doesn't always come easy to us. We are sometimes worn down with fatigue, pain, illness, stress, and various distractions. It can make it hard for us to assess the environment around us, to tailor our style to suit the audience, so to speak. We can sometimes become quite easily dysregulated, out of tune with ourselves. So take the time to know more about what makes you tick. How to recognize signs of stress and imbalance in the body is a great beginning. So it's critical to notice how we treat ourselves, using some self-compassion and empathy. The knowledge we gather by tuning in ensures that we are aware of our own needs and wants before we even begin communicating. This is particularly helpful in a high-stress workplace where we're required to be open, curious, and flexible in our reactions. So we want to pause and emotionally regulate before we react. Have a think about what might be your stress triggers. Look after yourself, prepare. Pick occasions that work well for you. If you haven't slept well, if you're in pain, a 9 a.m. difficult conversation with a team member may not be the time or the place. So think about when you feel better, perhaps where you're prepared, and choose a time if you can to have that conversation. Use assertive language, not aggressive language or passive language. And remembering to stay curious, not defensive. Ask those lovely open-ended questions. How well do you read the room? How well can you tailor your style to suit the audience? These things are really important. And I think we have to start with ourselves first before we begin some of the difficult conversations that we might be having. For example, simple tools like pausing before responding, even naming your intention, and using the fabulous I statements can really shift a conversation from a conflict scenario to collaboration. Assertiveness, not aggression, is key here. Staying curious and calm, even when others aren't, is definitely a leadership superpower. Just on that, I think I might add here that there's a lot of work that often happens when we think about understanding that emotional regulation for ourselves. And tools that people often talk about is the emotional intelligence that we bring to our workplace. How well do we manage ourselves and regulate? So the definition of emotional intelligence that I quite like is kind of in three parts. So initially, it's how well do you manage the emotionality as it bubbles up in your body and as it comes to the surface. So how well do you manage, recognize, tune in, but also self-soothe and support yourself to calm yourself down. That's the first part, your own regulation. Secondly, how well do you understand the environment that you're in, picking up on the cues, the scenarios, reading the room appropriately, understanding the emotionality that might be in the space around you. And the third part is how well do you manage and support, understand the emotionality of a situation where a person in front of you is becoming dysregulated? Can you support them to become more soothed and calm? And do you understand when that emotionality is coming out and coming towards you, how to make sense and navigate that? So emotional intelligence is something that we can absolutely improve upon. As we go through life, hopefully, there are opportunities for us to learn more. And particularly when we think about even basic things around looking after ourselves, recognizing, tuning in when we're becoming stressed or anxious or worried, and then taking a time out, calming ourselves down, even just taking a little mini pause and then coming back to the situation. When we think of people who are highly emotionally intelligent, usually they are those calm, dignified people who appear unflappable. So something to add a little bit to this is that we can all take a bit of a pause every now and again, manage ourselves, understand what is happening internally, and then come back to the table. And that really is helpful when it comes to communication as well. One of the biggest leadership blind spots is assuming others think and communicate the way we do. Research in social and personality psychology highlights that people vary in their comfort with detail, pace, and emotional tone. We are all different. People differ in how we think, speak, and engage. Direct communicators want clarity. Indirect ones prioritize harmony. Some people process concepts quickly. Others need more time. So tailoring your communication in tone, pace, and message structure can help reduce friction and increase understanding. Respecting differences is part of building psychological safety. Tailoring your message to the style of the receiver can help reduce those misunderstandings. Also increases our influence in the situation as well. So this doesn't mean changing who you are. It means respecting how others operate. How can we overcome common communication challenges and create more psychological safety? Misunderstandings often arise from unspoken assumptions or avoidance. Research by Amy Edmondson highlights the importance of psychological safety. People need to feel safe to ask questions or challenge views. Be clear on expectations, check for that understanding, and model open dialogue. Even a simple, "What's your take on this?" can open up, create clearer and more honest communication. So when people feel safe, they're more likely to speak up, clarify confusion, and contribute solutions. Always clarify those expectations, invite feedback, and explicitly check for understanding. Create a safe to speak culture by modeling that transparency and curiosity, not perfection. Psychological safety is the belief that speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, and mistakes will not result in punishment or humiliation. It's a shared understanding within a team or an organisation that it's safe to take interpersonal risks, like sharing new ideas, asking questions, and acknowledging mistakes without fear of negative consequences. Developing strong communication skills at work is essential for professional success. Here are 9 effective ways to enhance your communication abilities. Think about it. Okay, so before communicating, take a moment to organise your thoughts. Consider your message, your purpose, the key points, and the most effective way of conveying it. And often when I'm talking to leaders or managers or people preparing for a difficult conversation or a high stakes meeting, we don't put enough effort into just taking some time to be clear about what it is that we're going to talk about, and just really starting to kind of think about what are the key messages, the 3 things that I want to talk about in this meeting. What are the 2 things, perhaps? Even simplify it. Next up, being present and not distracted by other people or technology like phones, laptops, or other conversations. So being very present and in that very present moment. Don't rush. Take the time to craft well thought out messages, especially for important matters. So not thinking on the fly, actually putting in some effort and slowing things down. This approach helps you avoid misunderstandings and errors. Make it easy. Simplify your language and message structure. Avoid jargon and overly complex terms. Make it easy for your audience to understand your message. You might even begin a difficult conversation by saying, there's 2 things here that I want to work on. I think that just really helps to kind of make things easier to work through in a conversation that could be quite tricky. Be direct, get to the point. Clear and concise communication is often more effective than lengthy explanations. Focus on delivering the essential information. Experiment and diversify. Don't be afraid to try different communication methods and styles. Experiment with various channels and approaches to find out what works best for different situations and audiences. So you might even use a different technology platform for certain things. Again, this is about tailoring the style that you have to suit the audience that you're working with. Practice and reflect. Practice your communication skills regularly, both in written and verbal form. After each communication, reflect on what went well and what could have been improved for the next time. I think the reflection piece is really important. If we're not going through and giving a bit of a self-audit of what's happening, we're going to keep making the same mistakes over and over again. Consider the bigger picture. Effective communication goes well beyond words. Pay attention to your non-verbal cues, such as your body language, your tone of voice, and your eye contact. They can significantly impact the message you convey. And in fact, some of the research indicates that it's not even the content that we're talking about sometimes, and it's not the style of speech. It's actually how we visually communicate. And when we speak to people who are good communicators, it's about that eye contact. It's about those facial expressions and how that person is sending that message. So the visuals are really important to get right. Lastly, ask for feedback. Actively seek feedback from your colleagues, your supervisors, and mentors. Constructive feedback can help you identify areas for improvement and refine your communication skills here. Preparation is key when it comes to communicating effectively in the workplace. Taking time to prepare your thoughts can ensure your message is well received and prevent any misinterpretations. Spend some time gathering the appropriate information if necessary. Knowledge is power. If you've done your homework, you're going to feel more confident as well. Additionally, it might be beneficial to check in with a peer prior to communicating a difficult message. Another colleague's perspective could assist you in keeping the tone, purpose, and style of communication as appropriate as possible. Other more practical techniques include paraphrasing and clarifying during the communication. This helps convey what indeed you are listening to, and can that person understand? Do you have a good grasp, and do they understand the conversation thread? You might even say, so what you're indicating is, or am I correct in saying? This gives us an opportunity to be really clear about what the message is, how we're receiving the detail, and that paraphrasing can be very helpful for the person in front, particularly high stakes situations that might be quite emotional. Let's have a look at the essence of effective communication. So even thinking about some last hot tips about what it is that we can really focus in on here. Communicating confidently while focusing on clarity, integrity, effective boundaries, and growth. So starting with clarity, coming back to those I statements confirms the clarity around your thoughts, your observations, and your feelings. For example, we want to use I noticed, I observed, I saw, I feel. No one can argue when you begin the conversation using your I statements. Integrity. Be accountable. Believe in what you're communicating because that authenticity counts. Boundaries. Be firm about your boundaries. Stand up for what you believe in. Set firm and confident boundaries. And this is all about reading the room too, isn't it? This emotional intelligence and the tailoring your style to suit the audience. Lastly here, growth. Keep going. Be open and curious. Show grit and stamina and continue to learn more. Perhaps you're not there yet, as Carol Dweck, researcher who talks about having a growth mindset, understanding that through practice, an open mind and lifelong curiosity, success and competency are achievable. Ask questions, ask for feedback, and do seek professional development if necessary. Okay, to close, I'd like to invite you to reflect on a habit that could make your communication more effective. Maybe it's being more present when listening or being clearer in your feedback. Self-awareness, as I said at the outset, is the foundation of good leadership impact. So here's a few questions for us here. What might self-awareness improve? Where might self-awareness improve your impact? So thinking about perhaps understanding more about yourself, how is that going to shift or improve how you communicate? And lastly here, what's your next step in leading with clarity? What is it that you think you might need to work on to improve how well you communicate with people around you? Not just those in the workplace, but also the important people at home and in your community. Okay, so maybe I will hand over to Sally and we'll have a quick look and see if there are any questions or queries in our chat function. You're most welcome to pop them in there.
Thanks, Kristine. That was great. I, as always, have a big page of notes here. While all those attendees are thinking of any questions they might like to add to the Q&A, I do have one. I'm being a bit vulnerable and exposing myself here. I was wondering if you have any tips on how to soften communication or soften language, what I sometimes perceive as, getting to the point and directness can sometimes be perceived as aggressive communication. Mm-hmm. So are there any things that I can do to maybe soften those interactions?
So thinking about a particular conversation, I think sometimes we can see that there's different perspectives in how the message is being relayed. And sometimes it helps just to do a little bit of preparation around what is it that I'm trying to get across the table here and how can it be said? Like even just slowing down the meaning and purpose, even just the structure of the sentence. So know that a lot of us, value that direct, clear communication and really like to have a clear message. Others need a little bit more fluff and support and a bit more detail. And I think it's really important for us to do a bit of that preparation beforehand. And it might well be that there's a comfort zone too, in that sometimes we can do those direct messages to people around us that know us so well. Then we probably put a bit more effort in when we new people or strangers, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, great. I like adding a little bit more detail. I think that's probably where I go a bit wrong. There is another question here. When to end an interaction that is not necessarily going well and how to do so?
Okay. Yeah, look, I think, and we talked a little bit about this at the beginning of the session, that if scenarios become quite emotionally dysregulated, nothing fabulous is going to happen in that situation. So it really is important to have a bit of a pause. And so I would generally say to someone, I think what we need to do here is to have a break, to have a 5-minute break, or get a cup of tea or a coffee or a snack or a timeout. You may not use the words timeout, but that's effectively what you need to actually have happen, because as an individual becomes quite dysregulated emotionally, we are kind of at risk of that fight, flight, freeze response coming to the fore, and that's when mistakes are made in communication. So I would generally sort of suggest, and even in my own clinical practice, that we pause, that we slow down, that we take a break for a minute to get that kind of dignity back, but also to emotionally regulate and support ourselves. So a trip to the bathroom, it might be a cup of tea, it could be a glass of water, even just making sure that everyone's hydrated in the room can be a nice distraction from that emotional dysregulation.
Yeah, great tip. Thank you. There are no more questions. However, someone has put in the chat box, thank you. That was a really great presentation. So I agree. Thank you so much for your time, Kristine. And for those of you who didn't catch my email address at the beginning, it's sally@leapwellgroup.com. If you have any questions or want to get in touch about our services, please reach out. And a recording of this, I know some people unfortunately had to join a little bit late, so a recording will be shared with everybody following the end of this event. So thanks once again, Kristine. That was really fantastic, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Thanks so much. Thanks everyone for joining us. Take care. Have a great day.